Have you ever had a conversation that left you feeling unsettled? Like something was off, but you just couldn't put your finger on it? Maybe it was the way someone looked at you when they asked a question, or the tone they used. Friendly on the surface, but somehow it made your stomach twist. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Especially as we get older, we tend to believe we've seen it all. We've raised families, worked hard, learned some tough lessons, and we like to think we can spot dishonesty from a mile away. But here's the truth. Not all manipulation looks like manipulation. Sometimes it sounds like kindness. That's why today, we're going to talk about something that doesn't get enough attention. The kinds of questions people use, not to understand you, but to control you. These aren't harmless curiosities. They're traps. And knowing how to spot them and respond to them can protect your peace of mind, your self-respect, and even your relationships. As we get older, people sometimes assume we're more trusting or maybe less likely to speak up. But the reality is, now is the time to become even more grounded in who you are, not less. You've earned the right to protect your boundaries without guilt. So if someone ever asks you a question that makes your chest tighten or your voice catch in your throat, pay attention. That feeling could be your greatest protection. Let's start with one of the most common and sneakiest manipulative questions out there. Don't you trust me? At first glance, it sounds sweet, innocent, maybe even a little hurt. But look closer. That question isn't really about trust. It's about pressure. It's about making you feel like you're the problem for asking a question or needing clarity. Imagine this. You're having a conversation with someone, a friend, a family member, maybe even a caregiver or neighbor, and you ask something simple like, "Can you explain that again?" Or, "That doesn't quite make sense to me." Instead of answering directly, they lean back and say, "Don't you trust me?" Just like that, the entire conversation shifts. Now it's not about facts. It's about your loyalty, your trust, your character. Suddenly you're on the defensive. That's no accident. That's manipulation. The person doesn't want to explain themselves. They want to shut you down. And if you're like many people who were raised to be polite, to avoid conflict, or to give others the benefit of the doubt, you might find yourself backing off, even when your gut is screaming that something's wrong. But here's the truth you need to hold on to. Asking questions isn't rude. Wanting clarity doesn't make you difficult. In fact, it shows strength, confidence, wisdom. So the next time someone asks, "Don't you trust me?" don't take the bait. You don't have to get angry or start an argument. Just stay calm, grounded. You can say something like, ... Trust is important to me. That's why I ask questions. It helps me understand better. That one sentence reclaims your power without creating unnecessary conflict. Let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. The people who are honest, who care about you, who deserve your trust, they welcome questions. They don't get defensive or try to flip the script. They explain. They listen. They respect your curiosity because they have nothing to hide. Now let's move to the second question that can be just as slippery. Why would I lie? On the surface, that might sound like a reasonable thing to ask. But take a moment and think about what it's really doing. It doesn't answer your concern. It doesn't explain anything. What it does is put you back on your heels, as if the very act of questioning someone is an insult. It's a way of turning your focus away from what they did and placing it squarely on your doubts. It's emotional sleight of hand. One moment you're asking for clarity, and the next you're defending your right to ask at all. Let's say someone offers you a business opportunity, or tells you about a financial deal, or even just recounts something that happened in the family. You pause. Something doesn't quite add up. And when you voice your concern, they smile, that calm, confident smile, and say, "Why would I lie?" Now you're stuck. Because the truth is, most of us don't want to think the worst of people, especially if they seem nice or have a good reputation or have been in our lives for a long time. But people don't lie because they have a good reason. They lie because they want something. It could be control. It could be protection. It could be something as simple as saving face. Don't let that question silence your instinct. If something doesn't feel right, it's okay to press for more information. In fact, it's wise. Instead of getting caught in the emotional spin, come back to your center. Ask yourself, does this make sense? Can I verify this? Do I feel pressured to stop asking? If the answer is yes, that's a red flag. Not a sign to back off, but a sign to lean in with caution. I once knew a woman in her 70s, let's call her Margaret, who got caught in this exact trap. A distant nephew came to her one day, asking for a loan. Said he was starting a new business and just needed a little help to get it off the ground. Margaret, being kind-hearted, asked for details. He smiled and said, "Come on, Aunt Margaret. Why would I lie to you?" And just like that, she felt guilty for even asking. She wrote the check. 6 months later, she found out the business never existed. And the hardest part wasn't the money. It was realizing she had ignored her gut because someone made her feel bad for questioning them. That's the danger of this kind of manipulation. It's not loud. It doesn't yell or threaten. It whispers. It hides behind a smile. It makes you feel like the one who did something wrong. But not anymore. Not now that you can see the pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Remember this. Someone who's telling the truth has no problem being questioned. They don't dodge. They don't deflect. They don't make you feel small for wanting clarity. The ones who do, they're not protecting a truth. They're hiding a lie. So the next time someone tries to steer you away from your instincts with a phrase like, "Why would I lie?" Pause. Breathe. And don't be afraid to ask for more. You don't owe anyone blind faith. You owe yourself peace of mind. And sometimes that starts with one courageous question. Now let's keep going. There's another kind of question that might seem like a sign of closeness, but can actually be the start of a deeper manipulation. One that pulls you in quietly and makes you feel like you're part of something private, when in reality, it's a trap designed to test your loyalty. They might lean in close, drop their voice to a whisper, and ask, "Can you keep a secret?" It sounds innocent enough, even flattering, like they're trusting you with something special. But be careful. This question can carry more weight than it seems, because what it's often really asking is, will you stay quiet, even if what I tell you doesn't feel right? Now, I'm not saying every secret is a red flag. Of course not. Sometimes people just want a safe space to share something personal. That's human. But when someone uses the idea of secrecy to bind your silence, especially before they've even told you what the secret is, that's something entirely different. That's not connection. That's control. Let me share a story. A gentleman I spoke with a while ago, let's call him Frank, had retired from a small company where he'd worked for over 30 years. After he left, a younger coworker called him out of the blue and said, "Frank, can you keep a secret?" Naturally, Frank said sure, out of habit, maybe out of kindness. Then the man revealed something troubling. Their manager had been quietly cutting corners with retirement benefits for several employees, including Frank. But now Frank felt trapped. He'd promised to keep quiet, and breaking that promise felt like betraying a trust, even though it was about his own money. That's the power of that question. It puts you in a moral headlock before you even know what you're agreeing to. It turns your sense of loyalty into a leash. This is why it's so important to pause when someone leads with, "Can you keep a secret?" Ask yourself, why do they want it to be a secret in the first place? Is it to protect someone? Or to cover something up? Are they inviting me into something honest? Or pulling me into a mess they don't want to clean up? One of the most powerful things you can do in that moment is to delay agreement. You don't have to say yes right away. You can simply reply, "It depends on what it is." Or, "Tell me first, and then I'll decide if I'm comfortable keeping it between us. That way, you stay in control. You don't get boxed into silence before you even know what's going on. And if what they tell you goes against your values, then you have every right to say, I can't keep that to myself. That's not betrayal. That's integrity. And you're not too old or too nice to stand by your values. In fact, that's one of the most powerful things you can do in this stage of life. Now let's talk about another question that seems simple, but can twist your mind into knots. Who told you that? Have you ever brought up a concern, maybe about something you heard or a behavior that didn't sit right with you, and instead of addressing the issue, the other person fired back with, "Who told you that?" Not, "What makes you feel that way?" Not, "Let's talk about it." But a full pivot to tracking the source. That question might sound curious, but it's usually not about finding the truth. It's about changing the subject. It's about making you feel like the bad guy for even knowing something in the first place. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about what happened. It's about your loyalty. About whether you're spreading gossip or getting involved in things that aren't your business. It puts you on the defensive. And if you're someone who values fairness, someone who avoids drama, you might feel the urge to back off, to protect the person who gave you the information, or worse, to question whether you should have brought it up at all. But don't let that question shake your confidence. You have every right to ask about things that concern you, especially if they involve your well-being, your safety, or your peace of mind. If someone tries to shift the spotlight onto how you found something out, that's usually a sign they're trying to avoid accountability. Let's go back to Frank for a second. After learning about the retirement funds issue, he decided to confront the manager directly. He didn't accuse. He just asked for clarification. And do you know the first thing the manager said? "Who told you that?" Not, "Let's look into it." Not, "I can explain." Just a sharp pivot, like it was more important to trace the leak than to address the problem. That told Frank everything he needed to know. When you hear, "Who told you that?" you don't need to answer. You're not on trial. You can stay calm and steady and say something like, "Let's focus on whether it's true, not where I heard it." That's it. That's the line that protects your dignity without raising your voice. It keeps the conversation on track. And more importantly, it reminds the other person that you're not easily distracted by smoke and mirrors. This kind of clarity takes courage. But you've already got that in you. After 60, you don't need anyone's permission to trust your instincts. You've lived through enough to know when something feels off and when someone's trying to avoid the truth. One of the most freeing things about getting older is this. You don't have to play the games anymore. You don't have to tiptoe around people's egos or let guilt steer your decisions. You can choose calm over chaos. Truth over tension. Self-respect over silence. And you don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to begin. With one pause, one breath, one sentence that says, "I won't be manipulated." That's how we take our power back. Not by yelling, not by fighting, but by standing firm in our awareness. We're almost there, but there's still one more manipulative question I want to talk about. One that can sneak in quietly and do more damage than you might expect. It sounds simple, almost harmless, but it can turn your entire world upside down if you don't catch it in time. The question is, don't you remember? Now this one is tricky. Because memory, especially as we age, can get a little foggy from time to time. We misplace our glasses, forget the name of that actor from the old westerns, or walk into a room and forget why we're there. It happens to everyone. But when someone uses your memory against you, deliberately, that's not forgetfulness. That's something else entirely. That's manipulation. That's gaslighting. Imagine someone insisting you said yes to something you know you never agreed to. Or saying, "We talked about this last week," when you're sure the conversation never happened. And when you question them, even gently, they act surprised or hurt. or so convincingly calm that you start to doubt yourself. That's how gaslighting works. It doesn't just try to change what happened, it tries to change what you believe happened. It targets your confidence, not your memory. And once that seed of doubt is planted, it can grow fast. Suddenly, you're wondering if maybe you did forget something. Maybe you're overreacting. Maybe it's all just a misunderstanding. But here's the truth. People who care about you will never weaponize your doubt. They won't twist your uncertainty to get their way. They won't insist they're right just because you're not sure. Manipulators, on the other hand, count on that pause. They count on that moment of hesitation, because that's when you're most likely to back down. I heard from a woman named Joyce, a retired teacher in her early 70s. She told me about a time her daughter asked to borrow money for a small expense. Joyce agreed, happy to help. But a few months later, when Joyce brought it up again, just casually asking when she might get it back, her daughter looked stunned and said, "Don't you remember? You said it was a gift." Joyce didn't remember saying that. In fact, she was sure she hadn't. But her daughter seemed so certain, so detailed in what she claimed Joyce had said, that Joyce started to question her own mind. "Maybe I'm slipping," she told herself. "Maybe I did say it was a gift." That self-doubt haunted her for weeks, not because of the money, but because she no longer trusted her own memory. And that's the worst part about this kind of manipulation. It doesn't just damage the relationship, it damages you. But here's what I told Joyce, and what I want you to know too. Memory might not always be perfect, but your instinct is strong. You can feel the difference between honest confusion and intentional distortion. You can tell when someone is trying to explain versus when someone is trying to rewrite. So how do you protect yourself? First, take your time. If someone says, "Don't you remember?" and you feel that rush of panic, pause. Don't agree. Don't argue. Just breathe and say, "That doesn't sound familiar to me. Let me think about it." That simple response gives you space. It puts the brakes on the manipulation. Second, write things down. It doesn't matter if it's a sticky note on the fridge or a little notebook you keep by the phone. Document important conversations. Keep track of dates, promises, agreements. You don't need a perfect memory when you have a paper trail. It's not about paranoia. It's about peace of mind. And third, and this might be the most important, trust yourself. You've lived a full life. You've made decisions, handled conflict, cared for others, and come through the fire more than once. If something doesn't feel right, honor that. You don't need to be 100% certain to stand your ground. You just need to be centered in your values, in your awareness, and in your right to ask questions, no matter how old you are. Let me say something clearly. Your mind is not up for negotiation. Your perception, your clarity, your voice, they belong to you. And anyone who tries to shake that, twist it, or erase it is not operating from a place of love or respect. Now, let's take a breath together. We've talked about some heavy things today, and if any of it hit close to home, know this: you're not alone. Many people, kind, thoughtful, well-meaning people, have been caught in these emotional traps. And it's not because they're weak. It's because they care. Because they want to be fair. Because they value connection. But caring for others doesn't mean silencing yourself. Being fair doesn't mean being fooled. And seeking connection doesn't mean sacrificing your peace. The good news is, every one of these manipulative questions. Don't you trust me? Why would I lie? Can you keep a secret? Who told you that? Don't you remember? They all lose their power the moment you recognize them. That's the real key. Awareness, calm, clarity. The tools of wisdom you've spent a lifetime earning. So let's take a moment to let all this sink in. If any of these situations have happened to you, if you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling off balance or second-guessing yourself, you are not weak. You are waking up. And that awareness is power. You don't have to raise your voice to be strong. You don't have to be suspicious to be wise. All you need is that quiet strength inside that says, I will not be pressured. I will not be guilted. I will ask the questions I need to ask, and I will not apologize for it. That's the foundation of trust. Not blind faith, not silence, but truth. And that starts with you. So, if this message resonated with you, if something in it made you think or brought you comfort, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts or your story in the comments. Have you ever faced one of these manipulative questions? What did you do? What would you do differently now? And if you found this helpful, please give the video a like and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. This channel is here to support your journey with strength, awareness, and real-life tools for navigating everything that comes with aging, the joys, the challenges, and the power of owning who you are. Here's to living with more peace, more confidence, and more truth, no matter what age you are. You've earned your wisdom. You've earned your voice. And you deserve a life where trust isn't forced. It's earned, honored, and freely given. Stay strong. Stay sharp. And remember, the more clearly you see the truth, the harder it becomes for anyone to take your power away.